right-of-way, and also street connections, driveways, and all other forms of access. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the unconventional, the weird, the bizarre, if you will, the unconventional highway access. I'm going to go through a few things that you see on the screen there to talk about some of the unusual things that I've encompassed in my 27 years at DOT. So I'm going to go a trip down memory lane. This is how we used to control access sometimes. And you know, driveways were so huge, people didn't care, but every once in a while I said, well, you know what, we really need to really have a specific spot where driveways come in and out. And so we started pounding posts in the ground because, you know, the big cars back then could just run them over. So we weren't too concerned about clear zone at the time. But over time, you come to find different things that are coming about. And one of the first things that I was involved with was an emergency access on the interstate system. We had a fire department that needed to get to a certain area of the interstate that was in their jurisdiction on Interstate 39 here in the Dane County area. And their justification for wanting this access gate was going to reduce their response time 50%. Federal Highway Administration approval was required. So we developed an access agreement in 2004. And then a little bit later, another department, the Deer Grove Emergency Medical Services, came about and said we needed the same kind of access for a different portion of the interstate. So again, it reduced their response time as well. So we developed an agreement with Federal Highway Administration and the Cambridge Fire Department and the Deer Grove Emergency Services. You can see here on the map the coverage areas of the interstate, and literally between the two circles, which are the only interchanges on the interstate, you know, both Cambridge and Deer Grove, which operates out of Deerfield, they literally had to go around to get to that portion of the interstate. So this emergency gate really works well in their situation. And as you can see here, we actually have a driveway on the interstate, and it's really close to a maintenance crossover. The driveway itself has a locked gate, and only Deer Grove and Cambridge have the keys to it. There are certain requirements for how long the gate can be open, but basically it's theirs to maintain. We have a couple of rest areas in Columbia County that are the most busiest in the state, and they have over 1 million visitors annually. We had failing septic systems, very small buildings, and it was our intention to refurbish the buildings and at the same time get a regular sewage treatment system rather than a septic system. And the town of Decorah also needed to have a sewage treatment facility to help their area near Poinnette. So we kind of worked together, and in order for all of this to happen, again, we needed Federal Highway Administration approval. They decided to build a sewage treatment plant on some ground near the rest area. And another key component to this was that about 2 miles of pipeline had to be put on the interstate to get to the rest areas as well, because that was from the town of Decorah. So you can see here the old buildings was on the left, and our new, what we call kind of the Taj Mahal. Tell you what, $25 million will buy you a lot, nice buildings and really cool rest areas. But again, with 1 million visitors coming in, these are so widely traveled and used. And you can see here, you know, one of the things, if you build it, they will come. As soon as we built this, the trucks, even more trucks came. They're still parking on the shoulders, and it just gets so heavily used. So this is the southbound rest area. You can see the treatment plant there. And it serves both rest areas, so we do not have any septic problems anymore. Now, some people will ask, well, why do you have to have access from the rest area? Why couldn't you get it from the County Highway V there? There was a road through there, but it actually went through DNR land. And the DNR said, well, we have people that are hunting through there, and we really don't want anybody getting shot at. So it'd be easier if you could provide a driveway off of the back of the rest area. And we went through the Federal Highway Administration for this, and they actually said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So And it was just going to be one of those that very periodic maintenance. They could actually control it, a lot of the features from that radio tower that you see there. So they have a lock gate. The gate has been improved a little bit with the double farm gate, although we don't know where the sign went to. So that's one of the things we said, well, I think we need to put that one back. I also work on the, as I said, the utility side, and in 2000, we had Touch America come through and put in a fiber optic line basically from Minnesota down to the Illinois-Wisconsin state line near the Racine area, and every 50 miles you need to bump that fiber optic signal. And so they're looking for places to put their repeater huts. And this was about the 50-mile mark. This is on the northeast side of Madison at the interchange of Highway 51 and Interstate 39. And they asked us, can we put a repeater hut in the middle of this interchange? And I thought, well, let's find out. So again, we had to talk to the Federal Highway Administration, and to put a driveway in the middle of a loop ramp is unconventional, but they only needed it for periodic access, maybe once a month. And very few cars, there's not a steady stream of cars going on the on-ramp. So again, we decided that it was okay to use and still in use today. Some of the more unconventional stuff, cemeteries, there's always going to be access. We can't get rid of these accesses. But the one thing here in Wisconsin that we find out is that they're very narrow in their dimensions. And the unconventional part here is that you have these very small entrances that you have to accommodate. And they're just not the standard. You can't really widen them out. And sometimes there are many of them, and you can't always consolidate them. So kind of an unusual aspect. Parklets is something that is gaining popularity nationwide. It hasn't really caught on here on our state trunk highway system, but you see more and more of these actually taking up space or access along the street. The only one in the nation that at least I know of right now is in Vermont that has been approved, but a lot of cities have these parklets that have been approved and are catching on. We do have some in our Milwaukee area. This one is in particular is on Murray Street. It's actually two parklets together. Our concerns in something like this is the actual clear zone where there really isn't, an errant vehicle can actually hit some of these. And we do have one on a connecting highway, which is Greenfield Avenue in West Allis. And this is actually a pedlet. And a pedlet is kind of unique in which they put all the tables on the sidewalk, and then they make people actually walk around. So, they're forcing the people out and about rather than going onto the sidewalk. And one of the things we're kind of concerned about in this one is, is this ADA compliant? Can you get a wheelchair through there? Is it wide enough? Things of that nature. Again, a concern. The one thing that I found in doing the research for this is that there was a severe crash in Los Angeles. It wasn't necessarily the vehicle running into the parklet. People actually saw the vehicle coming, but it was all the flying debris that came from this parklet, and people were just kind of, their injuries were from this flying debris. Shared access, Denny, I think you've got some of this down in Crawford County, right? Where you're sharing with the, no, I'm just kidding, Denny. But every once in a while you have situations where you have shared access that is needed. In Wisconsin, there's actual laws where cattle can cross the road, but we build in cattle passes underneath to kind of separate them as necessary. But there are cases where the unconventional, you have one neighbor just doesn't like the other. The Hatfields and McCoy situation. So we have a nice rural driveway here that was built, and one owner wanted to improve it, and the other owner says, I don't know if I really like that or not. And he says, well, you're not going to do it if I don't do it. And so they both improved their side only, and they put a line down the middle, and they wanted to make sure that yours was yours and mine was mine, and they still don't like each other, and it's still that way even till today. And you can see in the back here they've got some trees to block each other's view, and I just think, did they miss kindergarten? Did they miss playing in the same sandbox together? Being neighborly. So One of the things that we've done with shared access is to make sure that any future property divisions or changes in ownership, if there is a cross-access agreement, that is maintained. So on a project in Minocqua, we actually bought a private easement, a permanent easement on private property to maintain this cross-access. So kind of an unusual situation. The project itself, we had 2 access points, one to a Verizon store there. It was very narrow. Parking was so bad that you could actually sometimes back out, and you may actually back out into traffic. The project came through and made it into one access, and today the access point that you see there, it's kind of a one-way that comes in and out and does serve the Verizon store. But and what was really good about this project is that both the grocery store and Verizon have the same property ownership. But if they were to sell, that easement that we have in place there then does still help with the cross access. Sometimes you run into this situation, Jeff, I think you'd be, you're knowledgeable about this, where you have lake property or river property, and you've got these narrow strips of land, and it seems like everybody wants an access, and you really don't want this to occur. So you want to try to get shared access as much as possible. And in this situation, luckily, a lot of these were the same ownership, the same family. So we were able to say, well, you can work it on the property line, maybe have one access point for 2 parcels. Neighborhood access. Sometimes you run into this situation where the city wanted a connection, the adjacent town didn't want it because the town didn't want the city's traffic. Understandable. So a few rock boulders in the way and some landscaping works out. And now this road does go through. They finally have made amends. But sometimes no agreement can be reached. And here in Madison and Middleton, there is a road on actually Middleton Street that doesn't go through to Middleton. It actually stops on the dead end portion. There's vegetation that's there on both sides and barricades. There is access for pedestrians and bicyclists, but the city of Middleton does not want the city of Madison's traffic. So they're gonna keep it that way. And so sometimes you can't just get it to go. But there are good things about shared access through a neighborhood. And in this situation, you've got the house. Between the 2 homes, you have this path from either side. As you can see here, you've got 2 potential gang leaders that are now being able to meet on a regular basis. And now in this sleepy Midwestern community, they're all going to be friendly to one another. All to do with very good access. This slide has gone around. We found it on the internet, but it's actually I guess one of the participants in the conference today actually took the slide and filled them out, and he said it's kind of compressed to make it maybe more steep. But when is a driveway too steep? When is it this unconventional? And I don't know, but maybe this whole neighborhood, maybe they drive monster trucks. I don't know for sure, but it just seems like, how can you even pour that kind of a driveway? And maybe this is good for ATVs. Maybe they use your ATVs on here. So we have another situation where sometimes we have to, for utilities, we have to make some very, very unique access. And in this situation, we have guardrail that is gapped for a utility transmission pole. This one particular situation, this was in a valley, and there was actually no way that they could get to it. So they, in part of clearing the trees, they said, can we have access to this location for periodic maintenance? So first of all, for construction, then periodic maintenance. But then as you can see here, they keep these poles in the ground to deter access from the actual property owner. It's basically just for utility access only. And if in fact they do need to get in there for whatever reason, they can take these poles out and put them back in. Another situation that we like to do sometimes is to make sure we have access from the private property side. So we'll actually bring in the fence instead. So another kind of unconventional thing that we do, but at the same token, this prevents them from just pulling off the highway. And so we've been able to have some of these situations. And every once in a while, you have to provide access during construction. Here, we had a utility access. They were doing some work at a signalized intersection, and the whole theme that we've been talking about today is not to have a driveway or an intersection in the functional area of an intersection. Sometimes you have to provide it, and again, this is for a project, a utility project, but as you can see here with the red circles, they had their own signal phase. So we were able to provide them access in conjunction with the entire intersection. Recreational trails. We've been getting a lot, and this is going to be a segue to Jeff's presentation, is that a lot of access has been asked for, not only for ATVs and UTVs, but snowmobiles, bike and pedestrians, multi-use, even equestrian. We have in the bottom left snowmobile access. Both of these sites are actually in St. Germain area. We have a lot of bike, pedestrian crossings, and they're more prevalent now than they've ever have been. Every once in a while, we get an equestrian crossing, and sometimes they're really big horses, and you have to accommodate them. We also have a thing here in Wisconsin called the Ice Age Trail, and it's over 1,000 miles. It weaves its way around the state, and it crosses many different locations. And we have actual crossings that are denoted for that. So finally, we expect ATVs, here mostly on trails, but we have them quite a bit now on routes. Just a quick note here as I end my presentation. You look at the one slide up there on the left, and you say, why are ATVs on both sides of the road? And in this kind of a tragic situation, they were looking for a missing woman. And so great use, helping out along the way. Jeff is going to talk a little bit more about ATV access on our state trunk highways, and the panel will follow. So that basically is going to sum up my presentation on unconventional access. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them now. If not, we'll just transition over to Mr. Emerson. So, thank you.